Ever notice how a runway model's red lip looks like it was laser cut, while an everyday application tends to spread out into fine lines like a watercolor painting? The standard advice is to simply use a lip liner, trace the edges, color inside the lines, and you are supposedly safe from smudging. But that assumes a liner is an impermeable sealant. In reality, it is a colored boundary marker, not a physical barricade. If you build a static wall on shifting, porous terrain and try to hold back a liquid, that wall is going to leak. Lipstick feathering is a predictable clash of anatomy, chemistry, and biomechanics, occurring regardless of how steady your hand is. To lock down a crisp edge permanently, we have to drop the cosmetic tricks and diagnose exactly how the mouth is failing at a biological level. Comparing normal facial skin to the lips, this transition zone, the vermilion border, is incredibly fragile, lacking oil-producing glands and a protective outer layer. Over time, collagen loss causes these underlying layers to deflate. The border folds, creating steep, microscopic vertical crevices. Because the area lacks natural oils, that skin dries out quickly. Dry skin bordering those microcanyons acts like a wick, drawing pigment outward. Now introduce the makeup itself. Lipsticks might look similar in the tube, but chemically they behave very differently once applied to the skin. High-slip glossy balms rely heavily on soft waxes and oils. As soon as those ingredients hit body temperature, they begin to melt and travel. On the other hand, matte formulas use polymers like acrylates copolymers. Instead of melting, these long molecular chains interlock as they dry, creating an elastic film that grips the skin, while traditional waxes simply slide. When you place a melting, unstable chemical formula over a dehydrated, canyon-like terrain, a perimeter breach is guaranteed. A thin ring of lip liner has no chance of stopping it. The final variable driving this failure is kinetic force. The mouth is surrounded by a highly active, complex muscular network. Every time you speak, chew, or smile, you fire up an inescapable friction engine. With every syllable spoken, the lips press and rub together. That constant kinetic friction physically forces pigment outward from the center of the mouth toward the edges. The outer corners are the structural weak point. They take the brunt of that friction, they constantly bathe in saliva, and they get stretched in two directions at once. The mouth is a hostile environment for cosmetics. It will systematically dismantle whatever you apply unless you identify your specific structural vulnerability. To stop the bleeding, we can use a diagnostic triage framework. Every failing lip falls into one of three distinct patient profiles. Profile 1 is the texture bleeder. This is characterized by pigment traveling strictly upward, seeping directly into those vertical perioral lines. Texture bleeders require a structural fill. Special effects makeup artists use a dense, putty-like product called mortician's wax to spackle and seal these microcanyons, creating a smooth, artificial surface before any color goes on. Profile 2 is the formula bleeder. Here, pigment smears outward in a uniform, omnidirectional ring rather than tracking into specific vertical lines. The fix here is chemical. Abandon high-slip glosses for polymer-heavy matte lipsticks and utilize a tissue sandwich to extract volatile oils. Applying a thin layer, blotting, and dusting with translucent powder ensures the polymers lock down. Profile 3 is the movement bleeder. The top and bottom borders hold their shape, but the outer corners are completely compromised by friction and saliva. For this profile, you reinforce the edges with a dry barrier of concealer and translucent powder, and you intentionally avoid depositing heavy pigment directly into those deep corners. Aligning the correct structural or chemical fix to the specific diagnosed profile neutralizes the root cause of the bleeding, which brings us back to that pristine runway model. Her crisp edges are a result of environmental control. Achieving a flawless border requires pairing a chemically matched formula with a biologically prepared perimeter. You cannot fight anatomy with a colored pencil. Diagnosing your specific terrain is the mandatory, non-negotiable first step to locking any lip color in place permanently.